Welcome to a brief history conspiracy edition.
This week, the anniversary of the moon landings.
If you're new to our channel, please like and subscribe. It really does help us. And this week we are talking about moon landings.
Yeah. The anniversary just around the corner.
Yeah, it's 50 years on the 20th of July. Today is the... So yeah, today we decided we're going to come up and we're going to have a tasty beverage and and salute the astronauts, or as we said last week, fine actors that went and landed on the moon 50 years ago.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks.
Or made a film about landing on the moon.
They made a lovely movie about landing on the moon. At the end of the day, look, come on. This is a conspiracy show.
Yes.
We are not going to talk about one of the greatest human achievements in history without talking about the conspiracy that's go with it.
Well, no, of course.
Regardless of what we believe, there are a lot of conspiracies. And I was saying this was the first, properly big conspiracy I ever heard of. And I remember I was only a kid. I was about 18 or 19 or something. And I heard, I watched a documentary on this saying that we never landed on the moon. And I was genuinely like, holy what? And I went around telling everybody, and my parents, oh bless them, they sort of, oh, didn't we land on the moon? Oh, Jamie, that's wonderful. Oh, you. And I was like, oh, we didn't! And I looked into all this evidence and stuff. There was all this photographic evidence that was getting knocked around at the time. And I was genuinely horrified.
That potentially we didn't land on the moon.
And
yeah,
it's just
I'm
the
quite
biggest
horrified.
lie ever told. If it's true, it's the biggest lie ever told. It's incredible.
Yeah, but probably up there, certainly. I can't think of...
I tell you what, if it's true, I salute the astronauts because the incredibly brave men and, I mean...
yeah.
So we've got some simple facts about the Saturn V rocket. Each engine, these F1 engines, are the most powerful single-stage engines ever built. Right? The Saturn V rocket had 5 of them. Oh. They generated 7.5 tons of thrust and could burn through 10 tons of fuel a second. They were sat on the top of it. And when it was lit, I mean, that even if they only went up into orbit and went round,
they're still pretty brave.
Salute, well done, sir. No chance. Would you? I don't even want to be in 20 miles of that thing. In case it blows. It's the world's biggest firecracker, and it's just it wants to explode. That's basically its design, and all that wants to do is explode.
Yes.
And the engineers are just desperately trying to control the direction that explosion goes in.
Yeah.
Want the direction to go that way, so the rocket goes that way, and it is amazing. But in a different way, if this is not true, if the conspiracy, some of the conspiracies are true, and we faked it, fair play to NASA because I mean they did a pretty damn good job, really.
Yeah, I guess they did. They fooled the world if they did.
And also, they've then confused. Even when people come out and go, what about this, and this? They've done a pretty good job of making them look like idiots. True. So, I mean, generally, when I was running around going, we fake the moon landings, people thought I was an idiot.
Yes.
And then other people started saying it, and
I think there's a propensity in our society for mainstream media reporting to be considered gospel truth.
Yeah.
And
if you see something, you believe it. Generally. Seeing is believing. At the end of the day.
And the moon landings were televised, so that probably did create that feeling amongst people that it could only be true. Yeah.
So now I've gone through a full spectrum of my belief for the moon landings. I wholeheartedly believed it when I was a kid. It then came out that I thought it wasn't, so I believed everything was fake about it. And then I've steadily gone through and thought, okay, well maybe just the film was faked and the photos were faked. Because that's another interesting thing about the moon. In the sunlight of the moon, it's 100 degrees centigrade. Sort of boiling water temperature. It's hot.
Yeah,
it's really hot. In the shade, it's anything up to minus about 170 centigrade. So again, really cold. I always wondered whether, and the cameras that they had were just reasonably normal cameras. I saw a NASA engineer saying, well, what did you do about the X-rays and things? Because we painted the inside of the camera with silver oxide. Like, really? That's all you did? Not lead? Silver? And that's all they did to protect the film from, I mean, you're probably too young to remember what a nightmare film was before digital cameras.
Yeah, I kind of remember it a little bit.
I'm in my
40s
not too much. young man. But I remember being on holiday and opening it too soon and going, well, I've just ruined all my holiday pictures because I've opened this too soon. A film it was pretty flimsy, and there was nothing special about those cameras or the film they used particularly. But they were able to take these images on the moon, and I always thought, well, I wonder if they knew they could get to the moon, but they knew they couldn't take photos.
Well, maybe the camera technology wasn't as much of a priority as the mission itself, and therefore they just made do with what was available more with the camera technology.
They could have just realised as well, because of the limited technology, they just literally couldn't take pictures on the moon. It's not just the temperature variance; it's X-rays and radiation levels and all this sort of thing. Maybe they just very early realised digital photography would probably work okay with a bit of protection. But maybe they just realised very early, because with the technology they had at hand, they couldn't take photos on the moon. So that's what I then believed for a long time.
Yeah, which is makes sense. Yeah.
And then a lot of this photographic evidence came out. But then in the last few years, people have actually started to debunk the photographic evidence and actually started to point out that. So if we talk about the big conspiracy stories, right? So the big things that the conspiracy nuts have really latched onto. First of all, so if we're talking about photography, the photographs.
Yes.
There's photographs of these etchings. They've got these crosses etched on the lenses, and they're supposed to be for helping to target the image and stuff. There are certain photos where it looks like the X disappears behind there. So they're taking the picture of a stone, and then there's the X, but it looks like the X is behind the image.
Yeah, or the crosshairs behind the image. Yeah.
Yeah, which obviously isn't possible. I actually listened to Hysteria Nation podcast about this, and they poo-pooed it for me. I was like, let me down there, boys, really. They said actually this is normal when you're talking about a film. So you've got the light coming in and hitting the film. If you've then got the crosshairs are actually on the lens, so if the object you're taking a picture of is bright enough, it's brighter than the cross of the lens. So it looks like the lens has disappeared, but it hasn't. It's just that is so bright, it's burned onto the film stronger than the image of the cross. Does that make sense? So it's sort of like, it's trying to look at something very bright, and you can't see something closer to you because the light is too bright, and that is the thing. So it's not that the X is disappeared or is behind the object. It's just the object you're taking a photo of is too bright, so you can't see the X anymore.
Okay.
That's disappointing.
It is disappointing, but in terms of it
having in another sense,
a rational explanation.
It means NASA didn't make really stupid mistakes. Because that's a pretty stupid mistake.
Yes.
If it was conspiracy.
I suppose another common one is the lack of volume of photos that have been released from the Apollo missions, and that you can't really deny. There is a distinct lack of photos that have been released.
The other thing is when
compared
NASA,
to the number that were probably taken. I would imagine.
No, the other thing, NASA regularly loses vast quantities of information.
No,
They've lost the entire recording, the original recording. They've lost it. They don't know where it is. This isn't like back in the day when we had, the VCR, and you accidentally filmed over your dad's porn collection, or something. This was some of the most historically important tape recording in history, and NASA went, we don't know where it is. Well, you should be looking after that thing. Find it.
We recorded Comic Relief 83 over it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Comic Relief was around in 83, but
it's like we were running around, the Super Bowl was on, we were running around desperately trying to find something to record it on, and we accidentally grabbed the first recording of Man's Earth mission. No, it's not. That is suspicious, to say the least, because then we can't digitize that stuff and look into it and do tests and things. That's gone. And like you said, there's lots of photographic evidence that just seems to be gone or not released in the first place, or...
Yeah, like the 114 case files of allegations of paedophilic behaviour by MPs in Westminster that went missing under Theresa May's watch in the Home Office.
Mate, I was shocked when that went missing.
I wasn't shocked.
It was the day before they had to release it all, and they just went, "We're so sorry." I was like, "We moved house." And that is properly like, I genuinely remember as a kid having some homework and using the excuse that we just moved house and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Got away with that.
So did they, apparently.
Well, because they said, no, you didn't. You haven't lost it. Come on, where is it? And they went, no, honest. We've lost it.
They probably left it on a train, I assume. But
Yeah. Well, they were spies, weren't they? It was MI6, wasn't it? And they was like, no, promise. Yeah, but NASA did the same thing. They just lost it. But it's not even that it got destroyed. They just lost it. They don't know where it is. But so yeah, there's a lot of photography evidence. There's a lot of that sort of thing. The flag.
The flag,
is the big one.
There's a big one, isn't there? Yeah, the flag.
I wasn't convinced of that at 12 myself.
No, it's a difficult one with the flag. Obviously, there's no atmosphere.
Yeah, I don't think it's difficult
on
at all.
the moon, but
it's obvious. For me, there's a metal pole and a metal pole, and they've literally got hold of it, trying to hammer it into the ground, and it's waving. Yes, because there's a metal pole being twisted from side to side
at the top,
and which is making the flag move. So that to me isn't. I could see that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think it's.
Whoa, no, that's rubbish.
I think the flag one's pretty much been heavily debunked, hasn't it? It's
an interesting thing about the flag. That's one of the things they've said is we could go back, and we want to see that the flag's still standing. And Buzz Aldrin actually said, we saw it blow down. When we took off, I saw the flag blow down, and others have said the flag's probably not there anymore. Because of the harsh environment of the moon, it's probably gone. Sounds like they're preparing that in advance, isn't it? Well, we told you it'd probably be gone.
And it's gone. Sorry.
I thought in vacuums and things, these things lasted forever. But apparently, because it's the harsh environment that the moon people were happy to wander around on, it's probably gone. It's probably melted. I don't know. But it's gone. They think it's gone.
I don't know how. Well, it still can't get buried under dust unless there's an impact that moves.
They've not said it would be buried though. They've said it's gone. It would have dissolved because, again, but like I said, the harsh environment has destroyed the flag.
Well, one of the alien races that's got a base on the dark side of the moon probably just gone and picked it up and got rid of it. That'd be my guess.
Be number 2. Yeah, just in case. So. The one thing that I've always said though that doesn't look right is you've got the Apollo 11 and when they ascended, it just goes, and then the ascending module, it just goes off the legs and just goes whoop into space, but there's no intense rocket burn. There's no thing. It just goes gone, like it's being pulled up on a crane, and the camera follows it as well. Which is actually quite complicated to do. You need like a radar controlled camera.
Yeah, you would actually. Yeah, it would be quite complicated to do.
So that's complicated in itself. But also, if ever you go back and look at the video, it just looks fake as hell. But that is maybe my untrained. I'm not a rocket scientist. I should be. But I didn't listen in physics enough.
I was going to say, well, yeah, you're not
I
just
had a pretty girl sitting in front of me. I didn't really listen.
Just a reasonably good grasp of physics to a high level to fully probably understand.
The way I would think of it is, but this is really far too simplistic. The moon's gravity is about between a fifth and a sixth that of the Earth. So I'd have thought it would take a rocket around the fifth or the sixth the size. But there's no atmosphere to burn. Rocket fuel. So rockets in space look different anyway. But.
Most of I suppose a hell of a lot of the fuel that's used in overcoming gravity, but some of it's also used in overcoming the air resistance, isn't it? So you're getting a certain drag coefficient from the atmosphere, which you'd have to combine the fact that the moon's atmosphereless. So it's completely removed any drag coefficient. Yeah,
objects move much quicker in a vacuum. This is why they're talking about these new modern intercontinental trains. They're going to do all these tunnels and they want to put them to near vacuum. Elon Musk, thank you very much, sir. Doing very low vacuum.
Maglev trains.
They don't have to be a vacuum, but pretty low, and then we can get 1,000-mile-an-hour speeds because there's no resistance. Like I say, so yeah.
If the track's straight enough, you can do 10,000 mile an hour.
Yeah,
there's no limit in a vacuum.
Yeah, but Elon Musk is a lot more sensible in these things. You talk about these scientists, and they go, well, we'll have a vacuum, or we'll have maglev, and we'll have 10,000 mile an hour.
Yeah.
Elon Musk says, no, we'll have near vacuum because that's far simpler. We won't have maglev because maglev's really expensive, but we don't need it. And we'll get maybe 1,000 mile an hour, and that's still twice as fast as current air travel.
He's definitely more of an engineer, more of an applied scientist than he is a pure scientist.
He's also very good at making money. One thing I heard about Elon Musk recently, they was talking about this. Is how off topic are
I
we
think,
going?
I think
But it's
he's-
SpaceX.
I think
so
he's
we'll,
spent a
let's
lot
go.
of it
He has
in the
spent a lot of
companies
it.
that he's developed. But
One of the things he was talking about though was that he's building the Tesla motor car, but he hasn't actually invested massively in the cars. He's spent, but he hasn't spent. What he's invested massively on is batteries and building new batteries, because he knows once BMW and Audi and Ford really kick in and building electric cars, he can't compete. He's got no chance. But what he can do is sell them batteries. This man is a genius. I'm sorry, but he's a genius.
yeah, he's clever. He's by no means a fool.
So yeah, and then obviously Elon Musk and SpaceX. That's how tenuous link to this. So what else? After we've got the flag, what are the other big ones? Van Allen belts.
Yes, the Van Allen belts.
It's part of the magnetic field that surrounds the Earth, isn't it? They didn't even know these existed until Van Allen, weirdly, in the early 50s, sent up a balloon connected to a rocket, which seemed counterintuitive to me. Sure, you need one or the other. But it was a balloon, and that went so far, and then the rocket did the last little bit, and then they detected these Van Allen, these radiation belts. There's 2 radiation belts, I didn't realise as well.
Yes.
So we've got the magnetic field that protects us from all the radiation. Where these magnetic fields are strongest tends to sort of hold on to some of that radiation as it hits the Earth. So we got a stronger one that's closer to us. It's about 300 to 400 miles up, something like that. And then there's a weaker one that's a bit further out. And these are high in radiation. So if we went through it, we'd fry.
Well, you'd be subjected to higher doses of radiation than we'd probably be used to. Certainly.
Yeah, so there's an Orion engineer at the moment. There's a video going around YouTube at the moment, basically by this Kelly Smith is his name,
right?
Which is, I'm pretty sure, the lead singer of the Stereophonics. He's branched out.
All right.
It's Kelly something.
Slightly different direction.
He's an engineer working on the Orion project, which is NASA's new spacecraft, which are planning to go to the moon and then Mars in, and he does tracking and stuff like this.
Right.
In his video, he says the Van Allen belts are a huge challenge of deadly radiation, and this is a challenge we need to overcome before we can return to the moon. And obviously now a lot of conspiracy guys have gone, well, that's proof, isn't it? NASA is saying, and NASA engineer is saying, we've not gone through the Van Allen belts. And actually his wording actually makes it sound like this is a challenge we need to overcome, sort of like for the first time. Sort of thing. That's the way his wording, that way he makes it sound. I'm sure he's probably come out with statements since going, it's not what I meant, calm down. But
yeah, I'm sure he probably has, or NASA have made him. One of the two.
You said what? But this video has gone massively viral, and he does say that they're deadly. NASA's argument was basically that it takes 52 minutes or so. Oh, first of all, they said that we set our trajectory really low, so we spent the least amount of time going through them for the Apollo missions. It only took about 52 minutes to get through.
Okay. So limiting the exposure time would limit the dose of radiation that the astronauts received. Yeah. Okay.
And they reckon the max they were ever going to hit was about 11.4 rads, which would take 300 rads over an hour to kill you. So they said, well, that's proof, isn't it? It's less. Their own estimates say that it would actually take about 2.5 rads to start getting signs of radiation sickness.
Right, okay.
And they never detected anything higher than about 1.3 rads or something in that area. But the average over the missions were actually 0.38 rads.
Okay.
And they even had, what they were really worried about was a solar flare. Because if a solar flare goes off, the radiation levels spike massively.
Yes, and they would have, That's one of the most dangerous things, I suppose, for an astronaut would be a solar flare.
They thought it through.
While spacewalking.
They had a procedure. They would just do it anyway. That's generally the procedure. If a solar flare went off on the moon, they might hold off for 12 hours until they left. And if there was a massive solar flare detected on the day of the launch, they might wait. Might. And that is actually in the procedure. But the overall principle was to go anyway. Now, you can either argue that the radiation in the Van Allen belts isn't that deadly, and Kelly Smith was wrong that they're not deadly, or NASA didn't go, or NASA didn't actually give a crap about what happened to those astronauts once they got back.
I think it was probably the latter.
Yeah. You're cancer riddled.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you landed on the moon for the first time. So
several astronauts, or beat the Russians to the moon.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think several astronauts' well-being paled in insignificance to beating the Russians to the moon in the midst of the Cold War.
So that's one of the things, actually, that they couldn't get insurance in case they died. Right? So the US government didn't say, don't worry, we'll look after your family. They could have done, couldn't they, easily? They could have said, right, if you die, we'll insure you. We will give your family $10 million each. This is what we are so grateful for your sacrifice. We're pretty confident you are going to die, so we will make sure your families are safe. They didn't do that.
No.
What they did instead was the astronauts signed a load of basically postcards. The idea being that if they died, the families would be able to sell them and make money. Because obviously they'd be worth so much money, you know, like American astronauts died.
Right.
Heroes, heroes. That is the most, the government could have just gone, don't worry, your families will be fine. You're going to do this incredible thing, we'll look after you. But they didn't even do that, they just give them a load of postcards. I mean, just sign them, your family can sell. Apparently they come up and they sell now, even, they come up every so often now and they sell for thousands of dollars each.
Okay.
But that's crap, isn't it? The American government, considering how much money they spent on that mission.
Yeah, but governments have never cared about the people.
That just shows they didn't care about the people. At no point they went, we can't get insurance, don't worry, we've got you covered. No, it's some postcards. It's horrific.
It is
awful,
really.
Other big parts of the conspiracies. Deaths. Suspicious deaths as well. It wasn't supposed to be Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins. Michael Collins. It was supposed to be on this mission. It was supposed to be Roger Schaeff, Virgil Grissom, and potentially Edward White. They were the front runners. In '67. Before this happened, they were the front runners. That they were, it was supposed to be Virgil Grissom. Potentially was going to be the first man on the moon, but they didn't make it. There was a fire on board one of the Apollo tests. In one of the cabins of the Apollo mission, one of the test cabins, there was a fire. All three astronauts died. That's always been seen as a suspicious death for the conspiracy theorists. But
well, possibly. But I suppose when you're testing rocket technology out to travel to the moon, which is essentially controlled explosions.
It's inherently
dangerous. I don't see, and the fact that they all died in the same incident,
and I would
tends to lead to me that it's not so much of a coincidence. If they'd all three of them had died in non-work related incidences outside of NASA grounds in their own lives in weird circumstances, I'd go, yes, they killed them.
That is a problem, though, isn't it? That there was. Some would argue a statistically unrealistic amount of deaths from NASA engineers in car crashes and so on and so on. Which we're doing this project where we're looking at conspiracies and theories through time in order. This is an additional episode because it's the anniversary coming up. We're going to the moon landings in far more detail.
Yes.
In about 20 years when we finally get to the 60s.
Look out for it, 2039.
We're still talking 5000 BC at the moment, so we're going to go. But there are stories of suspicious deaths. For me, this isn't. For one, it's not fair. These men died for their country, and as far as I'm concerned, there's no greater honour.
Living for yourself, maybe.
Yeah, but we think differently on that one. You know we do.
I'd argue that's greater than dying for your country.
Yeah, but I think dying for something you love.
Okay, there you go.
That's
a better way of phrasing it.
Back to the moon landings.
God,
we really are wandering off subject.
You can cut this. You can cut some of this if you want.
As soon as we thought, let's do a video and let's add beer to the equation, and then we were definitely always going to go off subject. It was always going to wander off. I was going to do this live. We should have done it live. Anyway.
We should have done it live, but we wouldn't have been able to cut anything.
No, that would have been a problem. We've had to have listened to all of it. So, I honestly think, obviously, when JFK said at that amazing speech of we're going to do this within 10 years.
Within a decade.
Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. That really put a firecracker up NASA's backside. They had to do it, particularly then after he was assassinated the way he was.
Yes, it was like a fitting send-off to achieve it before the end of the decade, wasn't it, after his assassination?
It become a matter of pride, not
Yeah.
just... I mean, it was already a matter of pride, but then it became a massive matter of pride.
Double.
There's also then the added pressure that they were genuinely afraid the Russians were going to beat them.
Yeah.
In a period where America, there was a hysteria about the Russians.
Yeah, of course there was.
So, when we've discussed conspiracies in the past, what is the first question I always say? Come on, I've said this to you a million times.
You probably have. I'm just trying to wrap my brain.
I always say, why? Is always the first question. And if there's a conspiracy theory, and you come to me saying, okay, well, I've heard that blah, 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 this has happened. And I'm like, okay, why? And with the moon landings, that's always been the easiest one to answer.
Yeah, very true, actually. Yeah,
They would, if they thought the Russians were going to beat them, they would fake it.
They would. Yeah, I honestly believe it would have been faked.
Done. It's faked.
And to be honest, you have Red Hot Chili Peppers allude to it, don't they? In one of their tracks, Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
Yep. There's that famous scene in a Bond movie when he just runs across. I think it's Roger Moore. Just happens to run across a moon landing set randomly in the middle of the movie for no reason.
I don't know if I've seen
and
that.
It's a little something that apparently Ian Fleming had written into one of the books. Yeah, it's quite a famous thing.
Okay, I'll have to look back on that
and
and see which film that was.
Ian Fleming was MI5, I think MI5 or MI6, one or the other. But he was a spy basically in World War II, so they think he might have known stuff but he wrote this in one of the books.
Yeah, which is definitely quite plausible if he.
It's in pop culture, isn't it, that it's thing. I think at one point, didn't like a third of Americans believe it was faked. It was a high percentage that believed it was faked at one point.
I imagine a higher percentage of Russian children probably believe it was faked. I don't know, but I don't imagine Russian children are probably taught the same as Western children.
We only know that our history. We don't know Russian. And Russian history might be that these stupid Americans. They could not go to the moon, so that's a terrible accent. They couldn't go to the moon, so they faked it. They're like little.
We had 10 times the amount of experience in space at the same time they claimed to have landed on the moon.
They did everything first.
But, yeah.
They got to the moon before us. They got to space before us. They got a man to space before us. Even though there are rumours that Yuri Gagarin wasn't the first one.
In space as well.
They did everything
and about
first.
a month before the Apollo missions, they were looking to land an orbiter to collect soil samples, weren't they?
Yeah.
Looking to land a probe from an orbiter to collect soil samples. It crash landed, didn't it? Otherwise, the first moon rocks would have been Russian, not American anyway. So I think they appeared to be in a far superior position, using probably far less funding.
With far better rocket technology. The Americans, after the shuttle project broke down, after obviously the 2 accidents, America's been using Russian rockets ever since, a Russian engine ever since.
Well, yeah, of course.
This new STS rocket that they're developing at the moment is going to be their first American-built rocket, basically since this time.
That's why Operation Paperclip was so important to the Americans, to nick as many of the Nazi German scientists as possible. I mean, Werner von Braun was a full-out SS Nazi.
Oh yeah,
and he built the V2 rockets that they launched on London.
He would have also been. He was head of NASA during the development of the F1 rocket, so he would have been heavily influenced on this. The F1 rocket that they've not surpassed since. It's still, like I said, the most powerful single-stage rocket ever built.
Yep.
When NASA is now building their new heavy lift rocket, one of the first things they did was rebuild one of these F1 rockets and test it, because they needed to relearn how to do it. They didn't know how that rocket was as powerful as it was. So they rebuilt one and tested it. And so that technology, even though it was designed in the 1950s, in a 6-year period from paper to launch, 6 years.
Phenomenal, yeah.
We're now going back and looking at that technology again.
Which I think almost goes to show you how advanced some of the German technology, the Wonder Weapon.
Really.
They weren't. The Germans weren't far away from probably developing tech that would have made them so superior in firepower and manoeuvrability in the air, etc. That we'd all be speaking German.
The only thing that really stopped them was we didn't out-fight them. We didn't out-tech them. We out-stuffed them. We just threw metal at them. And think the Sherman tank was one of the worst tanks on the battlefield, but we outnumbered them 30-1. This is how we won World War II. And if the war had gone on another year, or if D-Day had been put back till the next summer or so, it might not have gone the way we wanted.
No.
They were advanced us, they had better aircraft than us, they had better tanks than us, they had better anti-aircraft guns than us, they had better everything than us. And God knows what have happened. Obviously, we were nowhere near V1 technology, never mind V2 technology. It was very scary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Their naval technology was faster, but we only sank the Bismarck because we threw everything at it. And the only reason then, we happened to hit it once, luckily with a torpedo that damaged one of its screws, which basically meant it just started going round and round in circles. It couldn't get home. And there's still rumours to say that we never actually sunk it, it scuttled. They scuttled it rather than get captured. They were so far more advanced to us. They were probably something like maybe 10 to 15 years ahead of us.
Yeah, we'll believe that, yeah. Well, possibly even more. I mean, if you talk about...
Nazi Bell. Go on, let's talk about the Nazi Bell.
I do believe that they're experimenting with anti-gravity propulsion drives back in Nazi Germany times. The Nazi Bell, and looking into that is phenomenal. And they're talking about very similar stuff that you can find people talking about today about rotating a superconductive, superconductive, super fluid, ferro fluid, so iron filing suspended fluid that was then magnetised, accelerated in a vortex to relativistic speeds, which then actually creates a warp in the fabric of space and time itself. So the craft's not accelerating to these ridiculous speeds, it's actually warping the material that it's moving through, if that's
that almost
the best way of defining it.
in the direction as well, aren't they? Because they distort the space ahead of them and they get pulled towards that object. So they make the object closer and then pull it towards them. But obviously from our perspective they look like that. Anyway, that's again way off subject.
It is.
But still, we're having the Von Braun connection, so tenuous links.
Indeed. And we will do something on the Nazi Bell again in the chronological
I can't wait to do the Nazi
order.
Bell.
And that's another conspiracy I'm really looking forward to get delving into.
If we just go back to Apollo 11 though, and just for a second pretend that there aren't any conspiracy theories.
Okay.
This whole mission was a bloody miracle. Never mind how brave these astronauts were. And they were incredible. Like, we've already talked about this rocket that just wants to explode, and they're sat on the tip of it. Like, you know, it's just absolutely mental. They were going on a mission which most people didn't think they could survive. No. They had no clue how it's going to work. I've seen one NASA engineer talking about the landing module was so weakly built because it had to be so light that there were parts of it that if you got a screwdriver and hit it, you could puncture the hull. It was not a massively powerful thing. The orbiter was more heavily built, and it apparently had radiation shielding, even though you Google and try and find what radiation shield that damn thing had, and you can't find many details. They'll just say there's lots of radiation in space, but we had heavy duty radiation shielding. What radiation shielding?
In a very lightweight lander.
Yeah, no, the lander was screwed. Apparently, if the lander got hit by a decent solar flare, they'd be in trouble. But as long as it hit him while they were in the orbiter, they were okay.
Right.
Because the orbiter had the radiation shielding. But you honestly,
so the lander they
they
couldn't put any radiation shielding on the lander because of the weight implications. It would be too heavy.
But you look at the technical schematics of the orbiter, and I can't find anything that talks about what radiation shielding they had. But anyway,
interesting.
That's what they say, radiation shielding. You've then got the fact that the computing power of the Apollo 11 mission was roughly the same as a calculator. I was going to say that my phone is about 10,000 times more powerful.
So something like that. I know. Back in the early days of mobile phones, a Nokia 402 they said was more powerful than the computers that landed. And
then I get my massively powerful mobile phone, and I basically just use it to look at porn all day. What a waste of humanity.
You and most of the population probably, yeah.
But again, off topic slightly, but men, we built the internet. We wondered at the technology that we'd brought into being, and then we immediately filled it with porn. And then women came along about 10 years later and went, oh, we could shop through that. And that evened it out a little bit. And that's all you can now do on the internet is shop or look at boobs.
I wonder what percentage of the internet that makes.
Oh, it's 50-50 by now.
No, but what I mean is like what percentage of the overall total, 100% of the internet is porn or shopping. It's probably like 99 point...
I know at one point about, this was years ago, that they reckoned 75% of the internet was porn. But that was before we started really shopping.
Yeah, I suppose we've done a lot
but,
with it since then.
There was a joke, isn't there, about that you could search anything, and one of the top 10 things back would be some sort of pornography.
Yeah, you've got to be careful what you search for. That's definitely...
Oh, most definitely. And it really is only when we're now getting to a point where we're actually using it in a more effective way. But that just shows what men are. Men! This is marvellous. How do I look at boobs through it? I'm sure that's what we did when we designed windows. Windows are awesome. We could probably see boobs through them. Anyway, moving back to the thing. So, you've also got the 9/11. When they actually did make it to the moon, they released the lander. A lander that the test bed, they used to call the bedstead, had already tried to kill Neil Armstrong once. In, I think it was 1962.
Okay.
No, 1968. So in 1968, while testing this thing, they used to call it the bedstead because it just looked like a metal frame that looked like a bedstead. It flipped over at one point, and you just see Neil Armstrong go shooting off, and it nearly killed him. One of about 7 or 8 times that Neil Armstrong should have most definitely died.
Yeah, he seemed to have a few incidents, didn't he, in his life where he could have...
See on that start of the start of have you ever heard the $1 Million Man? Do you remember?
Yes.
There's the start of it, and there's this X1 rocket, and that's what Steve Austin crashed to Steve Austin. Is that right, or is that the wrestler?
Steve Austin. There is I'm sure there's a wrestler called that. Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm not sure who's in the $1 Million Man.
He crashes this X1. That's basically just a massive rocket with a little seat on the top. Neil Armstrong crashed 2 of them. So he was better than the $6 Million Man. He had 2 or 3 massive, horrific crashes in aircraft. They reckon he should have died 6 or 7 times. He should have died in this bedstead incident. And this
probably a good choice to send as the first man to the moon then.
Yeah, well, it was lucky. Because as they're on the way down, they overshot the landing site. So the site they were supposed to land at, they missed. And then as Neil Armstrong is coming in, he realised that the terrain wasn't safe to land on. It was boulders and a crater and things. It wasn't safe to land on. So he had to keep firing the engine and keep them up and land at another site. They'd never really planned for this. He did that on the seat of his pants. And when they finally did land, they had less than 1 minute's worth of descent fuel left. If they hadn't have found that other site, and if he hadn't have had the skill to keep that thing in the air, in space, for a little bit longer, the mission would have crashed. It would have been done. And there was no computer power in that, that was his skill. Neil Armstrong deserves a salute. He was incredible. And this was a man that you can look at, he should have died 6 or 7 times, but he didn't, because he was a different breed. He was a different breed. Well done. And then he came out with One Small Step for Man. I feel somebody wrote that.
It does feel almost like that was a written phrase.
I've seen interviews and I've seen him on TV afterwards. He's not the most charismatic man in the world.
No, he's not. He's hardly given any interviews really at all. I think
recluse is a word that's used regularly for him.
He did one in 2011, I think, maybe, with some Australian television channel. Apart from that, and apart from I can only recall seeing that 2011 one and possibly the actual Apollo 11 debrief.
There was sort of a Discovery Channel thing that he did, but all he ever did was, "Hey, I'm Neil Armstrong, and this is whatever it was about planes."
So he did the intro basically,
and then at the end of it, he went, "Oh, hey, I'm Neil Armstrong, bye."
Thanks.
And that was it. But he,
so he did the intro and the outro.
Yeah, basically. But he was an incredible man. Buzz Aldrin, but if Neil Armstrong was an introvert, Buzz Aldrin is an extrovert. He basically wears vests with the neon letters of "I was the second man on the moon," or stars all over him and everything. Have you seen that thing he did with Trump?
But he gets really annoyed, doesn't he, Buzz Aldrin, when anybody asks him, Was it fake? Did you really go?
Yeah,
He absolutely loses his
punched
head,
one guy, didn't he?
loses it completely.
Have you seen that thing with Trump though? When they were signing, Trump is basically doing a bit of it. He tried to do a bit of a JFK and said, "Right, we're going to go back to the moon within 5 years," which is suspiciously within, assuming he gets in again within his
next single term.
Yeah, can't anyone else have that thing. But they signed the command to say that, right, we're going to do this within 5 years, and Buzz Aldrin was there, and Trump's there going, space is really big, isn't it? And some people say it's infinite, and Buzz Aldrin was infinite and beyond, ha 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 ha, and Trump just sat there and went, oh well, this is definitely very big. Carried on. It's just...
Didn't get the Buzz Lightyear reference then.
No, well done, Trump, you moron. God love him.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Given that his name's Buzz,
yeah,
you'd think you might put 2 and 2 together.
No, I just think he's an idiot. He's a man that's got average intelligence, but massive pride or massive ego.
Yes.
Trump. But anyway, this is just really going off Trump again. But we've also got a new space agency guy that came out today, and his initial speech was basically, I'm here to help the American government transition from a peaceful spacefaring mission to preparing for assault and militarizing space.
Oh, lovely, because they've actually been doing that for a long time anyway.
At least he's admitting it.
There's some very interesting NASA footage, isn't there, of one of the STS incidents when they used to live stream all of the NASA footage.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
They don't do that anymore. They stopped that. I'm guessing there were too many things slipping through the net.
You mean the Star Wars incident where you could see the
thing flying in orbit around the Earth. It's coming in like that. You see a bright spark and then something shoot at it from the Earth. It then does over a 90-degree right angle turn and shoots back off the other way.
Yeah.
If that isn't some kind of Star Wars space railgun,
definitely looked weird. It definitely looked weird.
It looked like some kind of railgun that we've developed for weaponising.
We have railguns
and protecting us from.
I saw a thing on the news yesterday saying that goes, Americans, they're going to put laser weapons on ships. Because have you not been looking at weapon development over the last 20 years? They've been working for that for years. That's not news. It's news that they haven't got it already. But that's what they were trying to do for ages. Yeah. That's the next big thing. That's not news. Anyway.
Cesar's quite interesting now, though.
Caesar.
Sound laser.
Sound laser weapon. Yeah,
sound laser weaponry is being developed, basically. In fact, Britain's biggest export is weapons of death. But anyway.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for Saudi Arabia, our exports would plummet. Thank you, Saudi Arabia. They love buying a gun.
All we're really doing is giving a load of advanced weaponry to a load of violent people in the Middle East that hold us ransom for oil.
Gulf War I, we were very grateful for that because we had enough sense to build in back doors in all the systems. So we sold Iraq a bunch of anti-air missile systems and radar systems. And then when we decided we were going to invade them, the British went, do you want us to turn them off? And apparently the Americans were like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, we can turn them off. We built them.
we built a back door in.
And the Americans were like, well, we sold them a bunch of stuff as well. Because, well, why don't you turn them off? We didn't think of that. Mummy don't waste no fools. No, we've been fighting wars for so long now. We know how to do it.
We know how to do it well.
We know how to do it.
Probably should have given America a bit of guidance along the way before we started letting them sell weapons to everybody.
We should have mentioned
Probably would have been a wise idea.
You're the world's largest weapons manufacturer. Here's a few little tips. Oh, I just realised we've gone way off topic again.
You might have to trim this bit out.
Yeah, I'll just cut that out. Anyway.
We just came down like...
I've got to cut like half an hour of this. So anyway, back to the 20th of July. It really is... We use the word miracle too quickly, but this mission was a miracle.
It was miraculous, very much so.
And my personal belief today is that we went to the moon. My personal belief today is that this thing was incredible. That NASA deserves, and the American government they deserve an incredible accolade for what they achieved. Because what they achieved is one of the great human achievements in history.
Yeah. If they achieved it.
There will always be those questions.
Oh, I know. And that's the reason I just added that caveat onto the end of the sentence.
But what it comes down to is, and this is one of the reasons why this channel, we don't necessarily always believe the things we tell you, but we do like a good story.
Yeah.
And this is a great story.
No, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
And I can't wait to tear it apart properly when we get to it.
Yeah. We'll go into a lot more depth about all of the various sort of the issues that we raised today with regard to the flag, the Valannum belts, and go into a lot more depth.
Every mysterious death that happened, and we will talk about each one and because there were a few. And we'll look at every photo, we'll look at every image, we'll look at everything, and we'll have a whale of a time doing it. And I had 3 pints before we started, and I'm a bit drunk at this point. So, right, thank you very much. Again, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, see you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.